Hello everybody and welcome for the first time to a brand new game for the channel, and a pretty brand new game as games go, to be entirely honest. Today, we're not going to be playing our usual little tank builder game. We're going to be playing a little plane builder game called Flyout. Now, I'm imagining quite a lot of you have already heard of this. It was something that was under the radar about 2 or 3 months ago, but now definitely I think a lot of people have noticed its existence, myself included. About 2 or 3 months ago I saw this and immediately I was like, I want to get my hands on that one. I am desperate because, like, I got two interests. I got planes, I got tanks, right? And I like building things in games. I could build tanks in games, but I couldn't build planes in games other than in like KSP, where it's very limited. Now I can do both in like real huge amounts of freedom. And just to clarify, I was given an early access key by the moderators for the Discord, I think it was. So thank you very much to them, obviously. It is hugely appreciated, and what you're watching me do here is build literally the first thing I ever built. I had, when I started this recording, about 40 minutes on the clock. So this is documenting about 40 minutes to I'll level with you 12 hours in one video. This is by far and away the longest I've worked on a video. It's not quite as simple as Sprocket, I want to say, to get into. A little bit harder to kind of sink your teeth into. There's a little bit more in the way of engine simulation. There's more fiddling around with propellers if you're building a propeller aircraft. If you're going to play this game, by the way, don't start with a propeller aircraft. I've made that mistake. But you know what? I made my bed and I laid in it. I finished the job. And then I turned it into a jet so that I could learn those too. And they're way simpler, way easier to build because you don't have torque and you don't have to worry about the angle of the propeller and the pitch at different points on the propeller, because the bottom needs to be at a harsher angle than the tip so that the bottom doesn't end up producing more drag than it does acceleration. Well, sorry, I just punched my microphone because I'm doing hand gestures. I don't really know why I'm doing hand gestures. You can't see my hands. There's a million and one things that I really want to talk about in this, and inevitably I'm going to forget 10,000 of them. But less to say, I'm absolutely thrilled to finally have access to this game, and it is a shame that you can't at the moment as well. There's no keys going around at the moment, to the best of my knowledge. But feel free to join their Discord, which will be linked in the description to this video, and you can watch along the development there and be the first, or among the first, to hear any news. And obviously I will be trying to keep you updated with what's going on this channel, so if you are a viewer of my channel who's hearing about this for the first time and this interests you, then you can hear from me, or you can hear from the Discord. And also, I imagine there's quite a few people who just want to see more Flyout content who've never seen me before. And also, hello, please try out my Sprocket videos. It's very similar, but with tanks. Anyway, I've really run out of time, so I hope I mentioned everything. Hi. So, small guilty admission. What you just watched is me building something that looked a little bit, but not exactly like this. This is my radial-engined little early war fighter thing. I've put 450 caliber machine guns on it, which I thought was a pretty damn fine armament for a plane of this era. And I was picturing like 1934 as that kind of era. But, you know, this thing is pretty slow. We'll take it out for a first flight here. Now, you may have seen a couple of test flights. I don't know what I'm going to leave in the edit in the end. But this, for all intents and purposes, is your first impression of me actually having known how to fly this thing. And a huge thank you, may I say, ignore these errors, I am on a dev build. A huge thank you to the people in the Discord. They've been incredibly useful in telling me what I'm doing wrong, because there were a lot of things that I was doing incredibly wrong. Building a propeller plane as my first choice, not a great one, to be honest. But regardless, I do think this thing looks the part. I really quite like it. So we're going to give it a go. So our engine has turned itself off here, so we're just going to hit the ignition. And away we go. And this is so cool. I made this. Like, this is exactly the same excitement I felt when Sprocket first, like, launched and I first built my tank. I played it out. I'm experiencing that all over again, and I'm over the moon. I'm so happy. I'm so excited for this and to see where it goes, because at the moment, obviously, you know, Sprocket is further along in its development cycle. You know, it's in a release. This is in a closed alpha test, as far as I'm aware. You know, pre-release 0.1910. It says in the top corner. You can't get your hands on this yet, basically. But to the same effect, Sprocket was once in that situation, you know, and now we have our little campaign missions, we have custom battles, we have all of the different things that have been on this channel for the past year and a half, you know, and this is going to join that game. I really, really, really want to see it get there, you know. Eventually, I would not be surprised to see little air combat things, you know, where we can actually use the guns on my plane for a purpose other than just kind of having. So, obviously, let me just bind to trigger it. It isn't bound by default. But if I click here, look at these! They already fire out, and I mean, the sound effect is a little bit goofy, I will admit. I enjoy it, but I feel like I enjoy it for the wrong reasons. Yeah. I mean, it's not bad. It's not a bad sound effect. It's just a little bit tick 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 tick. Little pea shooters. But yeah, I got a little bit carried away today. So I launched the game for the first time last night, and I didn't do a lot. And by the end of today, I have 9.5 hours. It's only been like 12 hours, and I've already spent like 3/4 of those with this game open. Granted, I did eat. So, you know, I didn't close the game during that. So I wasn't spending the whole time fully focused, but a vast majority of it. And as you can see, top speed is a little bit disappointing on this thing. But, you know, I mean, the agility is also not great, to be honest. Generally, I wouldn't trust my life in this thing if I was in combat. Yeah, if I had to put a tier on this thing in War Thunder, it's a 1.3. Not quite a 1.0. I reckon you could take an F3F or whatever. But yeah, I decided that I wasn't content with just a little radial. Now, I could have upgraded the radial, gone for a slightly bigger one, but I wanted to try my hand at something a little bit different. So I've made a modification of this with an inline engine instead. And here that is. And I think you can tell I've spent quite a lot more time on this one. So there's a couple more details that weren't there on the previous one. So for one, I've kind of used this big old intake. Now, I'm pretty sure I don't need this intake, but it is kind of nice to have it because it kind of fills up the bottom of the aircraft without me having to actually model an intake box, which I probably could do, but this was quicker and easier, so I've just put that on there, and I think it looks all right. And then I've got a little exhaust thing down here. You know, planes have that. It's kind of a little cutaway. Under the wings, we've got the oil cooler and the water cooler. Maybe could get rid of one of those and have like asymmetry. That could be pretty cool. We've got the exhausts coming out the side of the cowling here, as well as these little side exhausts. I don't really know why I put these in here. It just kind of adds a little bit more to it and adds some life to it. I do think this thing is a lot nicer than the other one. Obviously, it's still not like the finest thing you will ever see playing this thing. There are some crazy builds that people have done in this, but we're going to fly it out as well, just because it's quite a lot more lively. This one, it gets a little bit more go behind it. Okie dokie, here we go. And as you can see already, the kilometers per hour are building up just a little bit quicker. And look at this camouflage. I did a pretty good job, actually, with the color on this. Matched it to the ground quite well. I didn't spend ages doing that. I just lucked lucked into it. But, you know, I'll pretend that I knew exactly what I was doing and it wasn't just complete coincidence. But I did go with a desert camo because we are here in the desert. There is another airfield we can spawn from that isn't in the desert, but I don't actually know where that is. You might be able to fly to it. I wouldn't be too surprised. I don't know if there's any big features in the world that we can go see. I mean, one thing we could do is we could fly over to those mountains over there and see if we can find some fun little canyons to fly through. Because that could be entertaining. I do love a little bit of low altitude flying. It's always nerve-wracking, you know? And if you're wondering about the red stars, I thought it looked a bit like a MiG-3. That's kind of what I used for inspiration on designing my engine cowling. So that's just the only reason. It looked a little bit like a MiG. And that's kind of the inspiration for the camo scheme as well. A lot of the MiGs kind of have less... Like, the Spitfires had these, like, very blobby camouflages, and the MiGs tended to have, like, lines of colour. Like jet smooth lines with like sprayed edges, but still a very interesting camouflage scheme compared to the like more traditional European styles of camouflage. Especially like the Germans had a much more complex camouflage scheme. You see BF-109s and they had these wild patterns on them, and then these things were a little bit more simplistic, but in a way that's kind of cool. So as we approach the mountains here, obviously this is a bit of an experimental video. I've never done a flyout video before, and I'm not 100% on what's going to be the best format for these kind of things. So I'm thinking of doing extended building segments, because obviously there's less to do after you've actually built the plane at the moment in Flyout, due to, as I say earlier, the slightly earlier state and development of the game. So we're probably going to have more of a focus on the actual design process. But do let me know in the comments below if you want to see anything in particular. So if you want to see me attempt to build different types of aircraft, try and maybe replica a specific aircraft, perhaps even we can start constructing a little tech tree of vehicles, because we've got Sprocket and we've got Flyout now. So if we build some tanks and we build some planes, we could build a little loadout, like a little tech tree. We could have our own War Thunder tech tree, and that would be I think that would be good fun. I'm starting to get a little bit concerned. We're flying into clouds here, but I know there's mountains coming up, so I'm a little bit concerned. I want to drop some altitude so I can see where I'm going a little bit better. Last thing I want to be doing is to smash into a mountain with very little warning. And we do have quite a lot more speed in this thing than we do in the radial version. Granted that it does come with about 1.5 times, 1.8 times probably the horsepower. But yeah, I mean, this is a lot better of an aircraft than my little radial one. The radial one I almost feel like I should make a biplane version of, you know? Slap 2 wings on there, why not? And oh, look at this. Yes. I can imagine when I build my first jet. So I've played around a little bit with a practice jet, but nothing too serious just yet. When I do build a jet, these kind of ravines are going to be an absolute blast to fly through. If we can get something like a MiG-21 perhaps, with really low wing loading and just yank it through the air, this would be great. It's really cool to me that there's these games coming out now where you get full creativity over these things. And the tools that you get in Flyout are incredibly, incredibly powerful. In the same way that Sprocket has node editing, Flyout has the exact same. So you can have just as much freedom as you ever had in Sprocket in this. And it's great that this is becoming a thing that we can do, because before we've been locked to, you know, historical vehicles or whatever the devs want to add to the game. Now, if, you know, hey, I want an Icarus IK3. Okay, do it. Make it. Go for it. There's nothing stopping you. And it's just, oh, I love it. I love it so much. Thank you so to the bottom of my heart. Thank you. I think Stone. Are you the Stone? Hang on, I should do some research before I say this, otherwise I'll embarrass myself. Stone. There might be other developers as well. I know Stone is a developer. if it's only you, Stone, thank you very much for this. This is incredible, and also, obviously, thank you for a key. I'm unfathomably grateful. This is so incredibly cool. And if there is a way to spawn multiple aircraft in and have a fight with them at the moment that I'm just completely missing, then please do let me know. I will definitely do that, but I don't believe there is. Oh, sorry, I could fly around here for absolute hours. What we will do, just before we go, is I'm going to go just a little bit more in depth, and I'm going to show you some of the tools that you can use to design these vehicles and kind of what you'll be getting your hands on when this game finally gets into full. Okay, so we're back in the editor here, and as you can see, we have this as all one part. So this is actually a bunch of parts mounted on a single fuselage. So when I go into the fuselage editor here, you can see a series of divides. Now these are very similar to the way that edges work in Sprocket. So there's faces in between them. We can see those here, like when we go into the assign material thing, we can assign glass to certain ones. And there, now it's transparent. And that is kind of how the faces work in Sprocket, but you can't edit them by face because it's not particularly convenient in an aircraft designing sense, whereas it is in tanks. Here, what we can do instead is we can move these segments either left, right, or we can use these text fields over here to do the same. We can scale them up and down with the same keybinds as we do in Sprocket, so S, and then you can also scale in just one axis by pressing X, S, and then X, or, for instance, Y, and there you can scale in the X or Y axis, and you can get whatever I just did there. Oh dear. Oh no. I've really made a mess of this. Let me reload. The aircraft. So that's how you... Ooh, no! Oh, God. Oh, I'm ruining everything. Okay, here we go. There we go. Don't leave the designer while you're still changing the scale of things, apparently. You can go into the vertex editing mode as well, and you can move around just individual vertices like this, and then you can kind of do this in the exact same way that Sprocket does. The smoothing, I think, is at a set value in this game, whereas Sprocket, you can adjust it. But obviously, it's an aircraft, different requirements. And then you also have this UI at the top left, which I'm sure you can't fail to notice, and that is the exact same as the node editor, but working in this kind of 2D space. And then you can mirror, or you can have asymmetry. So this entire aircraft is mirrored on the x-axis, but not the y. But if you, for instance, wanted to build something mirrored in both x and y, that is something that you can do. So you can see there, it's now going to match on all four sides the part that we're editing. So that's really neat. Let me just load in a version of this once again that has not been ruined. And then as for the wings, it's a little bit different, but once again, very similar. So if you've ever used one of the procedural wing mods for Kerbal Space Program, this works fairly similarly. So you get these points on your wings, and you can drag them about, and you can use this green slider to adjust the thickness of that wing segment, sometimes to, frankly, ridiculous levels. But if you're doing that, you can expect it to not fly very well. And then what your wing will look like by default is like this. You can then add a trailing edge and a leading edge, and these can be selected and can be assigned to have responses to inputs. So for instance, if you want your ailerons, you'd set your roll response to 1, and then it would respond to your roll. If it's rolling the wrong way, you can set it to -1 to get it to go the other way, and therefore you can tweak your control surfaces to work however you like. That is a very, very surface level overview of how the game actually does building. I'm sure if it's wanted, I can do some more in-depth talking about engines and propellers once I know a little bit more, but at the moment I don't want to speak too much about that because obviously I'm very new to this myself, and so I don't want to say anything that's wrong and lead you down the wrong path and set your expectations for the game wrong. So I'm going to just stay in my comfort zone, tell you about how the how the actual modeling works, because I feel like I have kind of got that to a point that I'm somewhat content with, and hopefully we'll be designing some cool things in videos to come. So if you want to see more of that, please do subscribe to the channel and obviously hit that bell icon. That's always useful. But I think we're probably going to leave it here for now. So obviously, as I said before, if you want to see anything in this game built, leave it in the comments section below. I will also be making a channel in my Discord to talk about these kind of, well, this game in particular, not these kind of games, this game in particular, as well as there will be a link in the description to the official Flyout development server where you can watch along and keep your eyes open in case the game ever enters a state where you're more likely to get yourself a key, or where you can purchase it when it is eventually in an open state. But yeah, for now, this has been a little look at Flyout. Thank you very much for the key. I am so thrilled to finally get my hands on this game. I have been lurking in the server for what feels like forever. It's not actually been that long, but it feels like forever because I've been so desperate to fly out a couple of aircraft. Sorry, that was cheesy and awful, and I'm going to sit in the corner of shame now. Yeah, I think that's all. I will see you in the future for more Sprocket, more Flyout, maybe some more games in the future. Perhaps we'll play some War Thunder at some point. Maybe we will. I've been getting back into it, which is probably a bad thing, but oh well. Anyway, ciao. And as always, a huge thank you to this channel's patrons: Badger, Caligo Drake, CamJam135, Cody N, DJ Pete's, Gavoon, Gunmaster929, Sad Cat, Just a Casualty 6211, Last Legend 11, Mark, Mardley Investor, Nicholas K, Rule Souls Brocken, Ryan Brody, The Kinesian Emperor, Zerosheim, and Zeit Wolverine. Thank you very much for your support.